And so we would now take the third presentation. To give that is Suneetha Kadiyala.
Good afternoon again, everyone. This is actually my first ever presentation is the Academy Week. That's because several of the co-authors, well, two of them especially, who did much of the analysis could not make it for, so usually happy reasons such as a baby and a new job. So, so here I am. There are of course several team members. So what we wanted to this is this is a study on a project that several of us work on, and it's called UPA1, which stands for Upscaling Participation and Videos for Agriculture and Nutrition. And as you can see, there are several organizations. It's a 7-organization membership between. Well, I won't read all the things here. So let's move on to the presentation. This is also the first presentation I haven't actually ever practiced, so pardon me if I bumble along a bit. So here is one of the photos. This is at one of our retreats, and so I just wanted to flash that in terms of how many people are involved, and some of them are missing here. So yeah, thank you. So what's the motivation behind this study? We know there have been several systematic reviews over the time, and the most recently by Marie and colleagues, who confirm that agriculture interventions can be made nutrition sensitive, and if they are made, they can have an impact on nutrition outcomes. And also can have intermediate impacts and also an ultimate impact on nutrition outcomes. So what that means, and land is an important input into agricultural interventions. So, but therefore, what does that mean for agricultural interventions in terms of equity? Are people with land more likely to benefit from these interventions than people without land? Is there some exclusion going on? And since there are some equity concerns, we thought, okay, let's go and see with the baseline data that we have on how land may be associated with nutrition outcomes. We know that land is an important asset and that there is a wealth gradient for nutrition. However, while we know that there's a wealth gradient for nutrition, and wealth is measured in different ways in different studies, recent reviews and studies have shown that actually the relationship between land size and land holdings and dietary outcomes and nutritional outcomes is at best patchy. So even from South Asia, from a recent review done by Shankar et al. From the LANSA consortium, show very mixed impacts in terms of land holdings and nutritional outcomes. Why is that? It could be because there could be heterogeneity in how land is measured, how dietary diversity is measured, or diet quality, any kind of nutrition outcome one decides to measure in a study based on those study objectives. There could be, of course, both diets and land are prone to measurement error. Estimates of land on diets may be confounded by wealth and how wealth is measured, and also by several environmental factors. For example, you may own a large quantity of marginal lands on which productivity could be very low, right? Because the soil quality may be low, for example. Access to markets are also important. Lots of studies have shown yesterday, Bhavani Shankar was making a point in the GCR of Stunting Hub side event that 60 to 70% of households do depend on markets for their food. Even subsistence farmers go to markets, as we know, and buy food. And it may be that the role of markets in procuring food is very important, and therefore the land has only so much effect on diets. Non-farm work could be one of the ways in which this could happen. And women's role and control of resources and decision making. If there's one thing that has shown in these reviews consistently is that women's empowerment and decision making is profoundly important for nutrition outcomes. So what we wanted to know was that to understand how land holdings and land size ownership might be associated with diets and nutrition status, because this is critical for designing equitable nutrition sensitive agricultural programs. Therefore, the research objectives are what is the association between household land size and maternal nutrition outcomes in Orissa in India, and explore whether agriculture production and women's empowerment indicators mediate these associations. So the methods we have are this study is based on a trial of these 7 partners that we have. And this is a 4-arm clustered randomized control trial in Kionjhar district of Orissa. It's in 148 clusters, and I really don't have time to elaborate on all the arms, but what we do here is to really use nutrition-sensitive behavior change and production practices combined with participatory videos with digital green and participatory learning and action with the eggjot, with Varat really holding it all together and implementing it in these 148 villages. So the theory of change is that these interventions will improve the production of food. Families will be able to earn more income. We promote reduced work burden of women, especially pregnant and lactating women, and that these interventions would improve decision making of women, and therefore leading to better maternal and child diets and nutrition outcomes. The paper is published in Trials. If you're all dying to know what it is and what this wonderful study is, please go ahead and look it up in the Trials from 2018 or talk to any of us here, which is why I showed the photos. I'm going to use data from our cross-sectional UPA-1 baseline data. So it is a cross-sectional study, and all the caveats and cautions that are required are stand true in this one as well. So here, what did we do? So land size is the main exposure, and we measured land size through usual survey methodologies. Maternal dietary diversity, which is the usual count of 10 food groups. Maternal BMI, and our main outcomes. Under hypothesized mediators, we have 2 agricultural indicators, which is value of agriculture production. This is the gross value, and production diversity. And then we used, of course, our VEA modules to construct women's decision making, social group participation, women's time use, and we also looked at women's own land ownership. Then we use standard multivariate regressions, and for mediation analysis, what we did was to look. We followed the usual mediation principles. This is a preliminary analysis that I'm presenting here, is that the exposure has to be statistically significantly associated with the mediator. Mediator has to be significantly associated with the outcome, adjusting for the exposure, and the exposure should be statistically significantly related to the outcome, adjusting for the mediator, so that the effect is attenuated. I'm going rather fast, I know that, but again, I'm happy to answer any clarification questions. I'll skip the descriptive statistics. All just wanted to say is several of them are smallholders. They have, 75% of them have less than 2.5% of the land. Minimum dietary diversity is low, and women seem to have decision making in terms of some or all of the decisions when it comes to food-related cropping patterns or agriculture practices, but otherwise, not so great. And only 83% of the women own no land. So that's tragic as well. So what did we find? This is, I'll just demystify this a bit. So this is not a mediation, it's not a DAG, yeah? This is, they're all independent associations. Remember, the top arrow is showing that the land size is statistically significantly related to dietary diversity, the one on topmost. What you see here is, but the effect sizes are rather small, as you will see, beta coefficient of 0.05. But related, associated. Land size is related to, or associated, statistically significantly associated with production diversity, value of production, and women decision making. What is interesting here is that what is important, the land size increases women's decision making, but nothing else really. Okay, sorry, I'm not following my own rules, but then these are different. The women's empowerment indicators that actually are associated with dietary diversity are different. So it seems like there is not that much mediation going on at this point. So potentially the agriculture variables might be the mediators here. What happens when we go through those 3 steps of mediation principles, you would expect the coefficients here 0.04 is an attenuated effect from what you saw in the previous slide, which is 0.05. That's a really very little attenuation on very little effect size, and we think, therefore, it is only marginally mediation, if any, going on. It's a very complicated story with women's empowerment. If you look at maternal BMI, again, all these side is the same, yeah? But what you see is actually a negative associations between women, agricultural indicators, and even women's decision-making and maternal BMI. So there might be mediation going on. And what do you see here? You actually don't see any statistically significant impact, and we don't see a mediation through women's empowerment. So my last slide, can I take 30 seconds? Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so taken together, what does all this mean, right? So what we mean is that land and agriculture variables are independently associated with maternal nutrition outcomes. But we don't think there is any mediation, at least in this case, going on. Again, it's a cross-sections data, it's preliminary, and as I said, all that is important. A very complex picture of women's empowerment indicator story. There is an inconsistent mediation. On one hand, you're seeing improvements in women's empowerment. On the other hand, from women's empowerment or agriculture variables are negative, which is why there might be a suppressing effect association, which might lead to an overall statistical insignificance there. Better agriculture indicators and decision making may women is working actually quite hard, and her workload may be high, and her energy expenditure may be high. So what are the implications of this? Of course, we are very careful about making any big deal about policy implications, but what this indicates is that land transfer programs do need to really think about gender and nutrition sensitive aspects, and agriculture programs need to consider land and women's land, but also women's energy expenditure in their design. Thank you so much, and thanks for the extra time.